Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Real quick, before we start, a couple quick announcements. Back table there has flyers. If you have any events in AA that you'd like anybody to know about, please put them there. We have a Facebook page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Keeps you connected with what's going on in the tri-state area, pretty much up and down the East Coast with recordings. If you have anything, events, anniversaries, or anything of value, workshops or anything like that, please post the flyers in there or links to that. It's helpful to everybody, keeps us connected. I always say if you're bored in AA, you're just not aware of what's going on. It's a very big, powerful engine of recovery going on all around the world. And it's a pretty cool thing. What else we got? And our YouTube page. Speakers are available on there. I think we're close to 80,000 views on our page there. It's pretty cool how the message that gets carried in the AA meetings are now all around the world. People have access to it that can't possibly be here physically, and that's the whole purpose of why we record and distribute these. And we have free CDs. Get them before they're extinct. We ran out of 8 tracks, so but we do have some CDs before they go. Get them and hand them on to your grandkids. Say we still listen to speakers on CDs. Anyway, our chairperson, we got a great chairperson tonight. Let's welcome Brian.
Good evening. My name is Brian and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday night at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8 p.m. Food and Fellowship is at 8:30, or Food and Fellowship is at 8, and 8:30 is our speaker in Doylestown. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
Frank, from Mountain Top.
Hey Frank, welcome.
Devin, alcoholic,
Hey Devin, welcome. Awesome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. Alcoholic.
Hey, Carolyn.
Anyone that goes to the Wednesday night Harmony Hour 6 p.m. meeting, that's canceled for this week. So if they want to get the message out.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Every Sunday night at 7 p.m. we have an ongoing commitment at the Human Center in Quakertown. If you're interested, you need a couple speakers for this Sunday night. There are no requirements. Just go and pay a service. Okay, stay there. All right.
Thank you, Ron. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Doylestown PA, Facebook channel. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there. And we have asked Kara to come and read the preamble.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Karen. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Now I've asked Andrew to come up and read the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew, and I'm an alcoholic. And these are the AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, workshops, etc. Just a reminder, there's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Matthew B. from New York.
Matthew Banks, alcoholic. Good to be here. Glad I didn't trip up the stairs. That would have been fun. It's been a while since I've told my story from COVID and stuff, so you get rusty, and when you get up here, you kind of forget what you're going to talk about, which is probably good. It's not my job to entertain you or to teach you or anything of that nature from what the book tells me. It's to tell you how I started and developed a relationship with God in my own language and from my own point of view. It's probably going to be the last time I quote the big book, but that is what my job is here. And if you're new, I'm talking to you. And I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you stay. I got sober November the 15th of 2006. If you're new, that's 15 years. I understand. Trust me. When somebody say their sobriety date when I first got here, I just like, oh, geez, now I'm going to think about that the rest of the meeting, trying to figure that out. If I make it to November 15th of this year, that will be 16 years. It blows me away. Last time I spoke here, I think I had 10 years, maybe even less than that. I don't remember. But it's good to be here. It was a good trip here. I forgot how beautiful it is actually coming here, so that was cool. But I got sober when I was 21 years old. I did not get sober because I wanted to. I got sober because it was the absolute last thing that was available to me. I burned my life to the ground in a way that was pretty remarkable. I never know where to start, really. I'm from Mississippi, in case you can't tell yet. I'm going to speak as fast as I possibly can. I had my first drink when I was 14, I think, 13, 12, somewhere in there. I had my first drink on Easter Sunday. My dad is a preacher, and I remember I had a drink with my buddy to, I don't know, celebrate Jesus or whatever we were doing. And I remember down south where there's civilized people, we take off of school for Easter. They don't in New York. Maybe they do here, I don't know. But so we got off Friday and we got off Monday. So we were like Easter Sunday, we were going to get hammered. We were going to try this vodka that we miraculously found in the backyard. And so we got drunk. We planned it for like a week and we drank this vodka. Taka vodka. I don't know if they have that here either, but it was disgusting. The only thing I really remember was I was lying down at the end of the night and there were these glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and they were spinning around and I had to throw my leg out so I didn't roll out of bed. And later on I found out that's called the spins. And the only reason I tell you that is because every time I drank after that, I would either drink so much that I would black out and not remember going to sleep, or I would drink a couple and just be like, oh my God, this is disgusting. And I would stop because I did not like the taste of alcohol. I never once was like, you taste the pear in that or any of that crap. When I see these people that have an orange in their beer, I'm like, oh my dear God, they have a lot to learn. Like my favorite drink was moonshine. If you're planning on relapsing, like moonshine will save you a lot of time. It is like unbelievable what that stuff did to me and for me. I think moonshine saved my life there for quite a while. Because alcohol treats alcoholism. Alcoholism is what starts when I stop. When I stop, I get worse. When I stop drinking, I'm a freaking maniac. I'm an absolute maniac when I stop. So that's why I drink, is because sobriety sucks. Every time I get sober, I get worse. Why wouldn't I drink? When I drink, it's like a spiritual experience for me. Finally, I'm able to talk to the people I'm afraid to talk to. I'm comfortable standing where I'm standing. Why would I not do that? And people would come to me in the end of my drinking, and I'd be like, oh my God, you're burning your life to the ground in literally every area. Why don't you stop drinking? And I'm just like, you really don't get it, do you? You have no idea what happens when I drink. It's unbelievable the spiritual experience that I have when I drink. I can finally breathe again. And then when I stop, it's the worst feeling in the world. And I stop, and it's not that bad at first. I'm almost proud of myself after a couple hours. The next day, you're like, fine, I'm doing this. I'm in the game for good. I'm quitting. And then the way I describe it, it's like you're on a bus. I don't know, you're like headed to New Jersey or something, like somewhere you really don't want to go. I don't know, maybe someone's from New Jersey. I would have said something else if I was speaking somewhere else. But it's like you're on a bus and some person, you're the only person on the bus and you're sitting there and you're like, all right, everything's good. It's not going to be too bad. And you're on your way, and then somebody gets on the bus and there's 38 other seats on the bus, and they come sit right beside you. And you're just like, oh dear God, here we go. And it's that's alcoholism right there. They're not hurting me. It's not hurting me. It's not painful, but it's a low level of anxiety that I'd rather not have. And then all of a sudden they just put their finger on your shoulder, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me right now. It doesn't hurt, but it's there, And that wouldn't be bad if it was only for a couple hours, couple minutes, but try 6 months and that finger never goes away, ever. And it's right here, right in my face all the time. It never goes away. I can see through it, but I can see around it, but it's always right here, right in my face. I'm either thinking about drinking or I'm thinking about not drinking. That's the only thing I ever think about. And without a spiritual experience, that's the way it's going to be, from my experience, for the rest of my life. So yeah, I don't know. I had that drink when I was 14 or whatever, 13. Like I said, 12. I really don't know. It's not even important. When I was 13, I was sexually abused or something. It wasn't that bad. I just share it because I want to be a victim. No, I'm kidding. I share it because it was a big part of my story and something that I really held on to for a really long time, and I went to a ton of therapy because of it. And then luckily I heard footsteps, and I'm like, wow, mine was absolutely nothing. But because of it, I had to go to all this therapy, and I remember when I was 15, I ended up having a nervous breakdown, And I'm not talking about like crying, feeling sorry for myself. Like I thought the CIA was trying to kill me for 2 years. I didn't know what happened. My parents were just like, Jesus Christ, like what's happening? They had no idea. So the doctors put me on all this medication. The medication just made me worse. I would spiral down and down and down. I'm in and out of these deep, dark depressions. My dad, like I was saying, was a preacher, and he actually preached at a different church than I attended on Sunday. And the first night that I started having this crazy, like, manic depression, it was just unbelievable. I was like, I had no idea what was happening. I thought people were trying to kill me, and I remember I was up all night, and I was losing my mind, and I went to church the next Sunday, and there were like 300 people in the sermon, and I got up and I interrupted the sermon, and I went up, and I pushed the preacher out of the way, and I was like, people are trying to kill me, you know? And they were just like, oh dear God. Like they had never seen anything like it, because I was really a good kid growing up. I really was. I mean, I did stupid stuff like all kids do, but I was not that guy. I was not the kid that was always in trouble in class. Like I was a pretty decent kid, you know, but that happened, and then stuff just started happening, and I just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And the more medicine they gave me, the worse I would get. The thing is, they'd give me medicine and I'd take it, and then I'd have withdrawal from that medication, and which would make me worse. And then I'm not an idiot, so I would stop taking that, and I'd get worse from the withdrawal, and then give me something else to counteract the withdrawal, and then give me that, and I'd get worse, and you get it. It was just down and down and down for 2 years. And this went for 2 years, and when I was 17, I had what they call like an entire psychic change. Like now I think I'm in the CIA, you know? And which was like a manic episode, and they gave me, they knew immediately what was wrong with me. I was staying up all night, and I was inventing stuff. Like I started breaking all the remote controls in my house, and I was like inventing this remote to like control the universe. This is before that movie Click, you know? And I would just point it at people and try to stop time, and my parents overreacted and took me to a psych ward. They were like, oh my God. You know, but the thing is, they put me on the right medication, and like I was okay. The only problem was the doctor, he set me down, and he's like, look, this medicine's going to work, but it's going to have a lot of side effects you should know about. He's like, first off, you're going to get fat. It's just going to happen. You're going to get fat, and sometimes you're going to drool on occasion, you know, just out of nowhere. It's just going to happen. You're just going to drool, and you're going to shake really hard, like to the point where you can't even sit in a chair. He said, but you know what? That social anxiety you've been worried about, don't worry about that anymore, because no one's going to talk to you, you know? And so I was the psychotic kid in class, sitting in the corner drooling on himself that no one would talk to. And my senior year class, I had to stand up and take all my tests standing up, listen to all the lectures, whatever, standing up, because I couldn't sit down. If I sat down, I would shake out of my chair. And so this went on for quite a while, and I slowly started to get my bearings back or whatever, and I ended up going off to college, and I don't know how I graduated high school, like probably because my dad worked there, but I went to college, and it was just, I mean, I started to turn my life around like people do, you know? I had that moment where I was like, all right, like you got all that out of your system. Like I felt like I was going to turn my life around. I'd had some spiritual experiences from being manic, and I really thought I had an experience with God. I still think maybe that was it, but it wasn't enough to keep me sober. And so I went off to college. I was crushing it. My GPA was really high. I don't know, 2.9, you know, something like that. I was in the game, you know, and I was like, everything's going great. I have friends now, and so I was like, maybe I could drink, you know, maybe I can drink again, and maybe I can drink on this medication. And so I started slowly adding that to my life. And I say slowly, like a few weeks, you know. And I ended up getting in this relationship, and I got in this relationship with this girl, and like I can't blame my alcoholism on anything but her. You know, it was just a disaster. You know, it was that kind of relationship where if you ask her today, she'd be like, we weren't even in a relationship, you know, and it was one of those kind. And so I was in that relationship or whatever, and I remember we went on this school trip. We went to New York City. I was living in Mississippi at the time, so this was like a big change for me. And we went to New York City, and while we were there, she was just like, you know, whatever we have going, like, can't continue, or I'm gonna call the cops, or whatever. So that just absolutely destroyed me. And I remember I left that bar, or wherever we were, coffee shop or whatever, and then we were on this trip with like 40 different people, and I left, and I just started walking around, and I got lost in New York City, and like, turns out the streets are numbered. If you're ever lost in New York City, you can find your way around. But I was just ran into one of my buddies randomly, and he's like, man, you don't look so good. Like, we're all gonna go to the bar. You wanna go to the bar with us? And I was like, absolutely, I wanna go to the bar. And we went to the bar, and they poured me a double shot of vodka, and when I walked in that bar, I was the most broken, pathetic, miserable guy you'd ever met in your life. Like, I wanted to kill myself. I thought I'd never amount to anything. The girl of my dreams just told me to screw off, basically. And they poured me that double shot of vodka, and I pounded that double shot of vodka, and I'm talking about immediately, I was like, she has no idea what she's missing out on. You know? It was an entire psychic change, instantly. And I was like, I'm doing this every day for the rest of my life. It completely changed my perception of reality. When I drank before, it didn't do that. But they talk about that invisible line that we cross. Some people say they were alcoholic when they were born. Okay, maybe, I don't know. But I don't know that I was. But I know the day that it did it for me. I know that day. I know that day very well. I know that exact feeling. I know exactly where I was standing. And it changed my life. And I honestly think it saved my life. Because for a long time, like I said, alcohol treats alcoholism, because when I stop, I get worse. And without a solution, I'm really, really, really screwed. So I was in this town in Mississippi, and like I started drinking really, really heavily around the clock. And, I was like, you know what? It's my friends that are the problem. I need to move. And so I moved to Auburn, Alabama, which is one of the biggest college football towns in the country. And I went there because I needed to get away from my friends and get away from drinking and like try to control my drink. It turns out they have a keg party every single night, regardless. Like if they won the game, we were going to be happy and getting hammered. If they lost, we were all going to be sad, but we were going to be getting hammered. And it was just the most unbelievable experience, and I just got I got worse very, very, very quickly. And within 3 months, I'm starting to have all these crazy feelings again are starting to come back to me, and I'm starting to invent stuff. And I invented this guitar for blind people, and I put Braille on the back of the guitar neck so that they could like find their way around when they're playing. And I told my buddy, he's like, dude, we're building a prototype tonight. And I was like, absolutely we are, so we started building the prototype. And I called my dad, and my dad was like, Matthew, blind people already play guitar. He was like, you ever seen Roadhouse, And just absolutely destroyed my dreams. But I'm up for literally 9 days straight trying to build this thing. I started building it out of aluminum foil. I don't know why mental illness and aluminum foil always just kind of, I don't get it, But I took aluminum foil, and I took this green foam and like balloons and olive oil, and I stuck it in the blender, and I hit frappe and tried to make this solution to build this guitar. I don't know what I was doing. I blew up the blender, and literally I was running around town. I went and told this cop that I found out a way to transport marijuana in large quantities without getting caught. That was an interesting conversation. And I just roamed around like a freaking madman. And my dad finally came to me he finally just came to me, and he's like, look, Matthew, we have a patent for your guitar. We finally found the right people to talk to. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, we got him, right? And he said, the only thing is that it's at the mental hospital. And we have to go to the mental hospital to sign these papers. And I was like, this is the greatest idea you've ever had in your life. Because I was like, this is the most secretive operation I've ever been a part of. And there wasn't a mental hospital in my hometown, so we had to go to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they started taking my blood pressure and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. It's like, thanks guys for making this on the down low, you know. And they stuck me in an ambulance, and I was like, wow. I'm like telling the EMT, I'm like, I don't know how you got this ambulance, but your job's like probably on the line, buddy. And he's like, that's all right. Let me just pump you full of sedatives to make this seem real. And I was like, all right, you know. And he stuck the needle in my arm, and I don't know what it was, probably Thorazine, Haldol, all that stuff, the cocktail, and they put that in me, and I blacked out. And apparently I blacked out for 2 weeks, and I came to walk down the hallway at the mental hospital. And I remember I was walking down that hallway, and I had the paper scrubs on. You remember the paper scrubs? A lot of you probably had them. And the Keds socks with the pads on the bottom, I guess so you don't slip and fall, and you have no shoestrings, so you can't hang yourself. It's a win-win, you know. And I came to, and my butt hurt real bad from all the needles that they had stuck in me, and they hit me over and over and over again because I wouldn't go down. And I remember I'd sit there and I'd just be doing this all day long, you know, just standing up like we're on a ship, you know, just back and forth. You ever see a new guy in a meeting doing that? Thorazine, that's what that is. Thorazine shuffle, and I came to, though, and I felt like somebody had taken my brain and wrung it out like a wet towel, you know, and I just couldn't, it was just a complete fog. And when I was in there, I thought I'd only been there for 3 days, and apparently I was in there for like 17. And my dad came to visit, and he said, when you leave here, you're going to rehab. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't have a problem. I don't see this as an issue, you know. And he said, you know, when you were in the hospital, they came to us and they told us that you were never going to be sane again, that you weren't leaving the hospital, that you were done for good, you were cooked. And I remember that scared me to death. That scared me to death, but what scared me more was now you've just given me a huge problem and I have no solution. Now I can't drink. Now I can't drink to kill that pain that I've just been presented with. And I don't remember much of the conversation. I just remember somehow he convinced me that it was the right idea to go to rehab. I think there was a judge involved, and I went to rehab, and when I went, I was pretty enthusiastic about being there. I mean, but I couldn't read and write. I'd fried my brain. I didn't know how to tie my shoes anymore. I had to wear house shoes everywhere I went. So I was, you know, I went to rehab, and before I went to rehab, when I was growing up, there was this couple that lived next to me, and they were like my grandparents' age, and they were like my grandparents growing up, and my dad was really good friends with the guy, and all my life, and they had a son that 9 years before I came in got sober, and he's like my dad's age, and his name's Frame Shop Dave. Turns out he owns a frame shop. It took me a while to put two and two together. And I went to his place because they were like, oh, Dave has gotten sober, let's go talk to Dave. And we'll drop you off there and just see what happens. And I remember I walked in his frame shop, and I was just like, he had that starry-eyed look, you know, the one that's like really enthusiastic about A and wants to give it away. And I'm just like, oh, dear God, what have I done? And he started sharing his story. He started, you know, he was armed with the facts about himself. And he started, and the wall just came down. You know, the wall came down, and I would sit there just absolutely out of my mind. And he said, Matthew, he said, you can come here anytime you want. You're welcome here anytime, but I've got 2 rules. I was like, okay. And he said, don't touch anything. There's a lot of sharp objects around here, and you're liable to hurt yourself. And he said, but whatever you do, please, dear God, don't talk to my customers. And I was like, all right, fair enough, Dave. And so I would just smoke cigarettes, and I would stare at his customers, you know, and just I wasn't talking to him, Dave, you know. He had this Coke machine, and he would just give me as many Diet Dr. Peppers as I wanted, and I would drink them all day long, and I would, you know, and I would just sit there and stare at him while he made frames. I've probably seen 10,000 picture frames be built, you know, and I would just watch while he did it. And I remember when I came in, I was given a gift. Like, I was given this gift that I didn't know that I could tell you no. When somebody asked me to do something, I didn't think I had a choice. I was so broken, I was so messed up, I was so afraid that I thought if somebody in AA asked me to do something, I had to do it. And so I remember Dave would be like, hey, be up at 5:30 in the morning. We're gonna go to a meeting 2.5 hours away. It's the area assembly. It's where they discuss the business of AA. How does that sound? I was like, that sounds absolutely awful, Dave. I want no part of this. He said, okay, well, be up at 5:30 and I'll come pick you up and we'll go to area assembly. So I'd be in my driveway pouting with my house shoes on, waiting for Dave to come pick me up to go to area assembly. And we would go and I would sit there all day while they're talking about whether or not you can have styrofoam cups in a meeting for 3 hours. And you're just like, you gotta be kidding me. And I would be there all day long, miserable, wanting to kill myself, staring at the clock the whole time. This was before smartphones, so I wasn't able to scroll through my phone. And at the end of the day, we'd go home, we'd drive that 2.5 hours, we would talk, we would smoke cigarettes, and I would get home and it would just be like, whew, another day, whew, all right, we got that one through, what are we gonna do tomorrow? You know, and the next day, same thing, you know. I'd sleep till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon just because I was just so fried. And so I ended up going to college, and because my parents had no idea what to do with me. They were just, you know, they couldn't babysit me anymore, so they're like, well, maybe we'll just send him to college. He can't read, maybe they can teach him in college, you know. So I ended up going to college, and I was there, and I think I was taking the minimum amount of hours, like 12 hours or something, and I would go to a class, and I would just be, you know, just dumbfounded, like, just gotta be, I don't even know why I'm here. And I was sit in the class and I would stare at the teacher, and then I would go to my next class, and then I'd go home. I'd get home like 12 o'clock, and I would lay in my bed until about 6 o'clock. I'd set my alarm, and I would wake up, and I would go to the AA meeting, and I'd go to AA meeting, and then I would be there doing whatever, and then I would come back, and I'd sleep all the way to my next class. That was my life. And I went to this AA meeting, and there was this guy there, and when I walked in, he like immediately was like, oh, that guy's new, you know, you could just tell immediately. And he walked up to me, and he's like, hey, my name's Tony, how you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm doing fantastic, Tony, you know. And he was like, do you have a sponsor? And I was like, no, I don't, I'm looking, but I don't have one. I didn't even know what a sponsor was. And he said, well, I'll be your temporary sponsor, how's that sound? And I was like, all right. He said, the only thing you got to do is you got to meet with me once a week, and we're going to go through the big book, and that's it. Call me every day, and I'll see you next week. I was like, all right. And so we started meeting, and literally the only thing I remember from the entire experience with Tony was sitting there, and I had a highlighter, and he said, we were reading through the forwards, and he said, you see that word recovered? I want you to highlight that word. I was like, all right, that's all I remember. I was there for 3 months, and I don't remember anything, and my psychiatrist was like, you are way too bad out of shape to be going to college, so you need to drop out and go back home. So I was just like, dang, man, you ruined it, you know, but I ended up going back home, and I spent a lot of time with Frame Shop Dave, and all I did was recovery. That's all I did. I went to a meeting at noon, I went to a meeting at 7, there was another fellowship that met at 8, so we would be like 15 minutes late for that meeting, and then we'd do it all over again the next day. And I just did it over and over and over, and slowly, I started to wake up. I started to wake up a little bit. I remember I asked Dave, I was like, Dave, will you be my sponsor? And he was just like, you're beyond human aid. I don't think I can help you. You know, and But he was like, look, you can't read, you can't write, there's no way we're going to do any inventory, so just stick close to me and do what I do. It's like, all right. And basically shut up and get in the car in a very nice way. And I was like, all right. So, that's what I would do. I would go to Dave's shop and I would just sit with him, and he'd play speaker CDs on the thing, and I would listen to speaker CDs all day. And it was it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I didn't think there was any hope for me. And I eventually was able to get to the steps, and I started doing some inventory. I got this sponsor, and it was the most elementary, I don't know a polite way to put it, but it was the most dumbed down form of going through the steps you could possibly imagine. But it was all I could do. And you know what? I brought my heart to it. And you know what? I'm sober. So I brought my heart to it, and we started going through this inventory. And I remember I was doing the inventory, and there were some things on my fifth step. I was only 21, but I had some things on my fifth step that I'm like, you don't tell people that. You just don't tell people that. And I got to that part of my fifth step, and I was doing my resentments, the fear, sex conduct, all that stuff. Nothing on the sex conduct. But I remember I was going through it, and we got to that part, and I just didn't have the courage to tell the guy, to tell him what was going on. And I balked. And I don't recommend that at all. I balked on it, and I didn't tell him. But I continued to try to go through the steps. And I did the 6 and 7, did the prayers, and I started to make my amends, but I just didn't. I didn't have the power, I guess, to carry it out. So I did what anybody would do that's not willing and thinks they need a change in their life. Instead of just doing what's in front of them, I got another sponsor. And and when that sponsor sat down with me and we got to the fifth step, he told me his fifth step. And he told me every dark cranny of the past. And he changed my life. Because every single thing that I was afraid to tell him, he had done the same thing. And way worse. I was like, now I'm in this predicament. Like, now you've just told me way worse stuff, and now I feel like a sissy because I don't have anything near as good as yours. And he changed my life. We went through that fifth step, and now I've told the most horrific things I've ever done to probably 100 guys. Easily. And I know what happened. There's a part in the big book that talks about, so we think cheerfulness and laughter makes for usefulness. And I think cheerfulness and laughter is the best thing AA's got going. We can laugh, and we can laugh over our past and this worldliness and levity. I mean, there's nothing like it. Laughter is a sound effect of recovery, And I remember this guy said in a meeting, he said, the moment that you can laugh at something, you will never suffer from that again. And there was something on my fifth step that I was too scared to tell anybody. And I remember I was talking with this guy, and we were dying laughing at the ridiculousness of our fifth steps and what we were so ashamed to tell anybody. And I remember at that moment I'd gotten through it. I remember at that moment I was finally free of the beast. And if you got something on your fifth step that you're afraid to tell somebody, I swear to you I've heard everything. If you can think of it, I've heard it. And I've seen a lot of those people get free. So we did the fifth step, and we got to 6 and 7, and 6 and 7, this is a very maybe crude way to put this, but to me, the 6 and 7 is a willingness to really, really suck, to be terrible, just be the worst possible, not human, but terrible at the task. Like, I want to be an honest man, so how do I be an honest man? I pray to be honest, and I start trying to act like the guy that's honest. And suck at it. Just try. Just really, really try. And that's what I've done with every single thing in my life. I've been terrible in the beginning. Terrible. But I've tried. I've brought my heart to it. I've asked God for help with it. And a lot of things I'm infinitely better than I used to be. A lot of things keep coming back. And I'm like, where did you come from? I thought you were gone. You were gone 7 years ago, and now you're back, and now I got to deal with you again. It's infuriating. But 6 and 7 to me have absolutely changed my life. And the thing about the 7-step prayer, when we say that prayer, it's we're removing the things that are standing in my way of being useful. If I'm not being useful, my defects are not going anywhere, because there's nothing in between me and, or there's a lot of stuff between me and God. And when I start connecting with you, those things are just pushed out of the way in order for me to be useful. One of the biggest problems I've had in my entire sobriety, I still struggle with it, is gluttony. Like eating like a freaking maniac to the point of being real bad, like real sick, and having to deal with it. And one of the things that it does is it stands in the way of my usefulness. It affects the way I think. It affects the way I behave. It really affects my energy and my life. And it's one thing that I really, really struggle with. But you know what? When I'm being useful and I know I've got to do something to be useful, there's a real good chance I'm going to try to eat healthy that day. Because I know I have to be of service, and it's a lot easier for me. But when I'm sitting in my house, logging into a Zoom meeting instead of going to a meeting when I'm perfectly capable, then there's a real good chance I'm going to have a big tub of ice cream beside me. That's just how it is. That's how it's been for me. And that's just one of the many, many things in my life that I've struggled with. But let me tell you this. I was having trouble with the eating thing, and I remember I'd eaten myself into like a sugar coma, like not literally, but to where I'm like about to pass out, to where I've eaten so much sugar. And I was at work to the point where I had to put my head down, and I thought I was going to pass out because I'd eaten so much. And I got this phone call, and you'll hear the rest of my story in a bit, but it was from this guy in Boston. And I looked and I was like, oh God, like I used to sponsor a guy in Boston, and he probably gave my number to one of his freaking sponsees, and they need help. So let me answer this phone. And I answered the phone, and it was a guy in Boston that was sponsored by my friend Jeff. And he was like, hey, Jeff gave me your number. He said you'd be the guy that would be willing to help or be able to help me. I don't know what's wrong, but I cannot stop eating, and I'm about to die. Like, I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. I was just like, I hate AA with a passion. I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening to me. And I was like, well, you know what, Jim? I've got a solution for you, And I told him about it, and I told him I was like, I don't know, man. Pray and ask God to remove it, and then act like a person would act that didn't have that problem, and then go help somebody. Stop trying to fix it. Start trying to help others. And that will probably eventually be removed. Maybe go seek professional help. I don't know, but I know that that's what I did, and I know that it's worked for me in the past. And so this is one of the things about my resentment list that I had. I had this resentment on my list. It was about this guy that I had no real reason to hate him. He was just annoying. And I just didn't like him. I didn't like when he was around. He bothered me. He was probably a lot like me. But one of the things that my sponsor did was, one of the things in my inventory is we have to pray and ask God to help me show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. God, save me from being angry. How can I be helpful to this person? And you have to say that every single day until you can honestly check that name off the list, that if they walked into AA, you would do everything you could to help them. And so I did this for this guy, and he's been on here for like 3 months now, and I'm like, I still hate him. I still hate him. I say the prayer because my sponsor makes me. I still want him to die. If he died, I wouldn't really care. I hope he has alcoholism. I want him to be miserable. That kind of resentment where you're just like so self-righteous. And so I remember I was on my way to an AA meeting. I was going to get there early because I think I had to make the coffee or something like that. And I was on the way to the meeting, and I got a phone call. I didn't know who it was, and I answered the phone, and it was that guy. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, oh, hey, David, how are you? And he's like, I'm good, man. He's like, he said, are you still doing that AA thing? And I was like, yes. Why, Dave? And he's like, I really think I have a drinking problem and I need help. I was just like, oh my God. All right. I said, well, how convenient for you, Dave. I'm on the way to an AA meeting right now. I'll come by and I'll pick you up. How does that sound, Dave? And I went and I picked him up and I took him to the meeting and I helped him find a sponsor. And I never saw Dave again, but I never saw that resentment again. that resentment went away. That's how AA works. That's the only way I can describe it. I had one guy that I had that was doing an inventory. He had the most horrific story I'd ever heard in my life. And when he was 17 years old, he was in this street fight. And the guy he was in the fight with, one of the guys that he was fighting, his dad was a chemist, and he went to his dad's lab and he grabbed a vat of acid and he threw it on my sponsee. And it burned him from his neck down, and all down his back, all down his neck, and burned him like severely to where you can still see it 21 years later. And so he's telling me about this resentment, and I'm thinking about Dave, the guy that I had to help. And I remember my sponsor was saying, sometimes you're going to have to say some things to guys that you really don't want to say, but you really are going to have to say. And I remember having to tell him, I said, well, you know what? Resentment's the number one offender, and I do believe that if you're not able to forgive this guy, then you're probably going to die of alcoholism. And for some reason, he knew that, but he was not able to do it. And I don't think I have the power to forgive. I think God removes the hate. I don't think I can make a decision and just be like, well, I forgive him, and then just turn around and walk off. I don't have that kind of power. So I had him say this prayer for this guy, and he's saying it every day, and I'll be checking in with him on occasion, like, how's that prayer going? He's like, I still want to kill him. I still want to kill him. And I was like, all right, well, keep doing it. Keep doing it. I'm talking to my sponsor, like, are you sure we should hold up this long? Like, this resentment's not going anywhere. Shouldn't we go to the fourth column? He's like, have him pray. Keep praying. I was like, all right. And a couple months later, he calls me. He said, you'll never believe what just happened to me. He said, I was in McDonald's, and I was in line at McDonald's. It was a Sunday morning. I was getting ready to go to church, and I heard that guy's voice. He was right behind me. He hadn't seen him in 21 years. The guy fled town when it happened. And he said, I don't know why, but I turned around and I had my hand out, and I said, it's good to see you. I need to talk to you if that's all right. And he said, yeah. So they went back to a booth, and Patrick was talking to this guy, and he said, I want you to know that, or he said, I need to make an amend to you. He said, I was really mean to your brother that day, and I said some really nasty things, and if I wouldn't have said any of that stuff, none of this would ever happen, and I hope you can accept my amend. And he said, and also I want you to know that I've forgiven you for everything that you did to me. And he said they both just started crying in McDonald's, just uncontrollably, because they both got free because he was willing to make an amend. That guy was a kid. He was 17 years old. What does he know? And that's the kind of stuff that happens in AA on a regular basis. And if I'm not sponsoring guys, if I'm not sticking my hand out to try to help new guys, that kind of stuff is not happening. I forget the miracle of AA. I forget the miracle of AA. So anyway, back to where I was, I ended up going through the steps. I remember crossing the last name off my amend list. It's the best feeling in the world. I've had more come up, but I remember crossing that name out. It was just like, I got a freedom that you couldn't believe. And so anyway, I was like 2 years sober. I have no idea what to do with my life. I have no idea. And I'd been to college. I have a useless degree that I paid money for. My parents paid money for, sorry. That was a lie. First lie of the evening. And but it was a useless degree. It really was useless. I was going to do literally nothing with it. And I remember my mom came to me and she said, my mom was a professional piano player. And she came to me and she said, have you ever thought about being a piano technician? Like working on pianos, tuning them, building them, all that stuff. And I was like, well, I did build a guitar once, so I think maybe this could work, and I ended up looking it up, and I looked it up online, and I was like, wow, this is like actually what I think I would enjoy doing. I'm a musician. I'm not a great musician, but I'm very mechanical, and I have a really good ear, and it's inside. Like, I wanted to be a mechanic or a welder, but like that's really hot, and like I don't know if I can. I'd rather work in the AC, And so I looked it all up, and I was like, this is what I wanted to do. So I ordered this online thing, this online course, which turned out to be junk. But I tried to learn on my own for 2 years, and I'm doing the best I can. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, trying to learn. And there's 12,000 parts on a piano. And so I'm trying to learn all this stuff. And so eventually a buddy of mine comes to me and he says, hey, I'm starting a treatment center in Alabama, and I need some help opening it up. I need some counselors to come and work for me. What do you think? You want to come? I was like, all right. I got literally nothing going. Let's do it. So I went back to Auburn, Alabama, and it's actually Opelika, which is like the neighboring town. And I went and we started this treatment center, and it was pretty great. I'm making practically no money, but I'm helping guys on a regular basis, and it was good. And then while I was there, I was like, I don't want to give up the piano thing yet. Let me look up and see if there's anybody in the area that works on pianos, like AA taught me. So I looked this guy up. He said, yeah, come on over. I'll show you some stuff. And we're in this client's home working on this piano. And the lady's piano that we're working on, she's like, Matthew, have you gone to school? Or what have you done? I was like, yeah, I went to college. It was useless. The whole spiel I just gave you. And he was like, the technician was like, well, have you ever thought about going to school for piano? It's like for piano technology. I was like, what? I was like, that exists? I didn't even know that was a thing. He said, yeah, there's a school in Boston. You should check it out. And so I looked it up. I applied, and I got accepted. It's not really hard to get accepted, but it was amazing that it happened, And I remember looking at this acceptance letter. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And my parents were like, yeah, you can go if you want to go. And I went to Boston. I think I was 3 or 4 years sober, and I'm in Boston. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm this southern dum-dum, going to Boston, and I'm going to this the most prestigious school for pianos. And I went, and I remember being there, and it was the most unbelievable 2 years of my life. There was a halfway house in the middle of the city, and there were new guys, just a constant flow of new guys, constant. And so that's what I did. I went to school and I helped drunks. That's all I did. I had no girlfriend. I had I had friends, but they were all in AA. So all I did was AA and go to school. And I remember talking with the people in class one day, and I was like, you know what? I want to work. I want to be a big deal in this industry. I want to be the best guy there is. I want to be working at Carnegie Hall. That is the dream. And I remember saying that, and just like a kid, but I was nearly joking, And so I ended up being in school. I ended up graduating. I got a job offer in Los Angeles, so I went to Los Angeles. I was there for a year. Then I got a job offer in New York. Came to New York. I was there for a year. And then I got another job offer in New York. And I was 7 years sober, and I was sitting on the stage at Carnegie Hall working on a piano. And I was blown away at what happens in here when we stick close to God and, do our best to perform His work well. And that's what happened. I'm on the stage there, and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. A couple years later, I was working the same job. I got to tune for the Pope. The Pope came to New York, and I got to work on the piano for him. And then I got an email one day. I was on the email list for an AA thing, and my email at the time had piano technician in the email. And so this lady contacted me, and she said, are you a piano tuner, from your email? That's what I gathered, And I was like, yeah, that's what I do. And she said, well, Bill Wilson's piano needs tuning at Stepping Stones. Do you think you could come do that? And I was like, well, that's going to cost you. No, but I was like, but I remember I walked in that house in the museum, Stepping Stones, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. I'm working on, it's Lois's piano, actually, Bill Wilson bought it for, but I'm working on this piano. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is the reason that I'm able to do what I do. So my life has been, do I go till 9:30? Okay. And so my life has just been unbelievable. And so now I have a whole nother, it's been 10 years since Carnegie Hall. So I'm like, there's all this other stuff. Now I have my own business, and now it's like more fears of more stuff. And now I actually am a consultant for a piano manufacturer, and I tell them what I think is right and what is wrong and how it needs to be built. And I do piano restoration. I have my own shop, and I'm terrified pretty much all the time. Pretty much all the time. Constant fear and anxiety is what I have. And I'm in positions to where I just don't want to be. It's like, I did not ask for this, God. You know, you're giving me a lot of responsibility, and I'm terrified, and you got to help, you know. And, you know, it's been one step at a time, and it's been unbelievable. But what I've found, I'll end on two quick stories. When I was working in the concert department at Carnegie Hall, like all that stuff, my boss was like the #1 guy in the world, like the guru, like the guy that was a technician. And he told me one day, he said, Matthew, you don't work on pianos. That's not your job. Your job is to help people. He said, your job is to make the artist comfortable. And if they need water, you get them water. Like Ron did for me. I learned that in AA. If they need water, you get them water. If they need to talk, you talk. If that includes working on the piano, then you work on the piano. But you're not there to work on the piano. You're there to comfort the artist. That is your job. And when I took that attitude into work, my career exploded. Absolutely exploded. I've lived in 12 different cities since I've been sober. I've worked all over the country. I've gone to Europe to work on pianos. I mean, it's unbelievable. All because of that, you know. But Frame Shop Dave, when he tells a story, he always ends with this, and this is what I like to end on, is, you know, when I came into AA, it was like I was in this deep, dark cave, you know, and there was no way out. Literally no way out. And off in the distance, I finally saw a tiny little light. A tiny little light, and I knew, I don't know what that is, but you got to go that direction. And I kept going, and as I got closer, the light got bigger, and I finally got there. And it's just a guy with a flashlight. And he hands me the flashlight, and he says, go get the next guy. You know? So, thank you for having me.
Let's thank Matt once again. My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks everybody for being here. Just a couple quick announcements and we'll close out. We have a meeting on Monday nights at 6 o'clock in this very room. It's a step meeting, and we're always looking for speakers for service for that meeting. You can talk on a step or just share your message. Thursday night, 7:30, Salem Church is right up the street on Court Street. We do a big book breakdown every Thursday night at 7:30. We're there going through the book line by line, paragraph by paragraph. You all are welcome. The speakers come here at their own time and expense. It's customary us to form a line and thank them. And just some powerful stuff, fantastic message. And the sky is the limit if we put God in A first. All things are achievable, even if you don't even want them sometimes, right? But we have a beautiful way to close, and we'll close with the Lord's Prayer if you care to join us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.